Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly in Vegas, joined today by Marco D'Angelo to talk, of course, the Kentucky Derby. Marco, it is the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby, but every single year, us as sports owners, we get so excited. I mean, this thing's been going on for a very long time. Why?
Well, Kelly, what makes it so exciting for me, other than the fact, I'm a big horse guy, own horses and everything. This is, as a sports bettor, this is like, Christmas morning, because unlike sports betting, we're not betting against the house where you go to the window, you make your wager, the house takes your bet, they're doing the 110 to win 100. That's how it operates. With horse racing, it's a pari-mutuel wager. What that means is you're betting into a pool and you're not betting against the house. The house doesn't care who wins. They make the same amount of money whether it's the favorite or the long shot wins. What happens is you're dividing up the pool, or let's use a food reference, the pie, and we're competing against everybody else that's betting. And I'm sorry, most people that bet the Kentucky Derby, I feel I've got a decided edge over, because this is an event. There's going to be people that are going to bet the Kentucky Derby that don't bet horse racing, but they want to be part of the party. There's going to be mint juleps. People are going to dress up. They're going to have their crazy hats on. It's a party. It's a day that they want to be a part of it. So as I refer to it, there's a lot of dead money in the Kentucky Derby pool, and we're going to get a part of that.
That is something I like to hear. Dead money. It's almost as good as plus EV. Not quite exactly, Marco, but we're going to get into it. We're going to talk some long shots today. Maybe I can get an exacta from Marco. I got a very mean text message from Marco the other day, our harness horse. He sent me an exacta. I didn't play it because I didn't want to jinx her. Of course, 18-1. She comes in as the outright winner. And he's like, damn it, Kelly. Here I am doing all this hard work, and you didn't even get a profit. I said, Marco, sometimes the purse money is just enough for me. The purse money from the Kentucky Derby is going to be worth it enough for some of these owners. We have two clear-cut favorites. As of this morning, Fierceness in the 17 post, which we'll get into in a minute, technically the 16th spot now, 5-2. Sierra Leone, 3-1. And Dornoch, the only one to beat Sierra Leone, which is a whole nother handicap in itself. Marco, let's talk about why these two stand out as the clear-cut favorites.
Well, Kelly, as you know, when you go to the Kentucky Derby, you have to earn points to get in. The top 20 point earners get into the Kentucky Derby. These were the top 2-point earners. They did it. They went on the Kentucky Derby trail, all the prep races, and they got the job done. They were the highest point earners. But these two horses are complete opposite in how they race. Now, let's start with the favorite, Fierceness. He is going to be saddle pad number 17, and there's a little history around the number 17, and that is no horse has ever won from post 17 in the history of the Kentucky Derby. Now, even though for betting purposes, he's going to be number 17, because we've had a scratch this morning, number 9 Encino has been scratched out of the race, and number 21 moves into the race as an also eligible epic ride. What ends up happening, though, is every horse past the number 9 spot moves in one slot in a starting gate. So technically, he's going to be breaking from post 16. I don't know if he wins if we give him the asterisk like Lou Gehrig with the home runs, because he technically was number 17 but didn't break from post 17. But what Fierceness does is he's what we call a front runner. He's going to break out of the gate. He's going to go to the lead or sit right behind the leader. Now, that is a good style of racing. If you get honest fractions, or modest fractions is even better for these horses. And we've seen this happen in the Kentucky Derby a few times, twice in recent years. Authentic did it for Bob Baffert a few years back, went to the lead. Nobody went with them because, remember, the 1.25 mile distance of the Kentucky Derby, these horses haven't gone that far yet. It's not as far as the final leg of the Triple Crown, which is 1.5 miles in the Belmont, but 1.25 miles is as far as these horses have gone. So everybody's, until they actually do it, you don't know for sure that they can get the distance. So a lot of times a horse will go to the front end and nobody wants to challenge him early, and then he gets soft fractions. And I know talking with our horse that we own together, explaining different things to you, and especially our other partner, Johnny Detroit, whenever he can't understand why our horse that comes from behind didn't make up ground. And I have to explain to him, they went too slow the first half of the mile. A horse can only go so fast. And if they go slow in the first half, that means the second half is going to be faster on the front end. And if you're coming from behind, you can't make up all of that ground. That's the advantage to having a front runner. But there's also a disadvantage to it. If they get caught up in a speed duel like we had a couple years ago, where a couple Japanese horses decided to battle early on and we had suicide fractions, you saw horses coming from way back, and that's the race that Rich Strike lit up the tote board at the longest shot on the board. And I know Joe will remember, nipped my horse Epicenter that I had a big future bet on at 30-1. That was a crushing moment for me. So Fierceness earns the favorites role. He does have an outside post, which is good for a horse that's going to leave the gate, but he has to use a little bit of himself early because he wants to get over to as close to the rail as he can before he hits that first turn. So he earns the favorite spot. Now, the other horse, Sierra Leone, I really like this horse, but the problem is this horse isn't suited his style for the Kentucky Derby. He is a stone cold closer. And as I said, when you're a closer and you're coming from last or next to last, you got two things to encounter. One, what I just talked about with fractions, you need an honest pace so that you can make up the ground. But even if you do get an honest pace or even fast fractions, because you're coming from the back of the field, you're always going to be subject to traffic problems. And when you're in the Kentucky Derby, this is probably the only time these horses are ever going to be in a race that has 20 horses in it. So there's even more horses that you've got to navigate around. That presents a problem for closers. What happens a lot of times, a horse starts to make the move and they're bobbing and weaving through horses and you're going faster because you're coming from behind. There's horses that are tiring on the front end that are coming back to you. Picture yourself on a freeway. You're rolling along and all of a sudden you come up on a car that's going slower than you, but there's another car to the outside of you. You can't move around the car. And what do? You got to tap your brakes. Well, for a horse, when you tap the brakes, and that would be pulling on the reins a little bit, or in horseman's term, having to check your horse, you lose all momentum. And sometimes, because these horses aren't automobiles and have motors in them, it takes them a second or two to regain their momentum, and that's all that it takes for you to lose a race. So that's one of the problems that you can encounter. The other solution is, or problem I should say, is if you want to avoid traffic, you stay to the outside. The problem with that is if you're racing on the outside at the Kentucky Derby, through two turns, you're giving up a lot of extra ground to the horses that are on the inside. So that's the problem with Sierra Leone. But I'll tell you, if you've watched this horse's replays, when this horse unleashes that move, it is wicked. And if it gets a clean trip in honest fractions, you're going to see Sierra Leone charging in the lane coming to the finish line.
Marco, before we get into some of these long shots, I was just curious. I just went to lunch with a good friend, also a horse bettor, and he said, Kelly, I always love to look at the horse that won the Florida Derby. Yet we're talking about him, but you didn't mention that fact.
Well, the Florida Derby in recent years has been one of the better prep races because, the timing of the race, it goes a week before a couple of the big Saturday is the following week where you have the Bluegrass, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Wood Memorial. A lot of people feel that extra week is a bonus, and it's just been the horses coming out of there, whatever, that Florida circuit. Florida, it seems to people love Florida. I can't complain. We know our buddy down there right now is enjoying Florida, Mr. Stat Daddy, Ralph Michaels. So it's good, but that is an angle a lot of people have. The one road to the Kentucky Derby that hasn't been good in recent years is coming through the New York circuit in the Wood Memorial. Those horses have not been a factor for several years in the Kentucky Derby.
All right, that's something worth noting because, yes, my dad still likes to talk about the Wood Memorial. All right, since I'm not a chalking weasel and we've only touched on two very chalky horses, Fierceness and Sierra Leone, let's talk about some long shots. Just a touch, currently on the Kentucky Derby website, 10-1 in the 8 post.
Yeah,
Just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on him?
this horse is very intriguing to me, and this is trainer Brad Cox's other horse. His horse that's getting all the attention is Catching Freedom, but don't sleep on this horse because this is a late bloomer. This horse only has 3 career starts. And Kelly, these horses, what you try to do is get the horses ready, and you want them to peak that first Saturday in May. Some horses are ready earlier. They get a foundation at 2. Then they get a little break before their 3-year-old season, and then they start the campaign. And generally we'll have 2 or 3 prep races prior to the Kentucky Derby. Now, history has shown over, for decades, it was a golden rule. If you didn't race as a 2-year-old, you didn't win the Kentucky Derby. All right. Just a Touch did not race as a 2-year-old. He got started as a 3-year-old early. He did race in January. Perfect spacing. He had a race in January, a race in March, and a race in April. This will be his 4th career start. I like that sequence, but he didn't race at 2. But here's the thing. That myth got broken a few years back with a horse named Justify. Well, if you take a look at the racing form and look at the sire and dam, the sire, or layman's terms, this horse's dad is Justify. So his dad did it without racing at 2. Let's see if he can do it as well. And because he's only had the 3 races, he has not hit his ceiling at all yet. We don't know how good this horse is. And what impresses me with him, why he's moving in the right direction, is if you look at the Beyer speed figures on this horse, he has increased his Beyer speed figure in every start. And he took a big jump in his last one, and I expect another jump in this one. And his speed figure in the last race is among the best in this field. So if he takes one more step forward and gets over the inexperience in horse racing, we call that greenness, which he hasn't shown any of that yet, you got to look at this horse. Another factor why you got to like Just a Touch is if you like Sierra Leone, who is one of the favorites in this race, and as we talked about, is at 3-1 odds. You got to like this horse because this horse ran a bang-up second to Sierra Leone. You can bet Sierra Leone at 5-2 or 3-1, or you can bet this horse at 8-1. Here's the difference. Sierra Leone, as I said, is going to be coming from dead last. Just a Touch has tactical speed. He will not be on the lead in this race, but he'll be sitting just off of it, and he will have a jump on Sierra Leone in this race. Even though Sierra Leone ran him down in the last one, we talked about there's a lot more obstacles in this race that wasn't in the Bluegrass when these two raced against one another. If you talk sheerly value, this horse presents a lot of value compared to Sierra Leone at the odds.
All right, another 10-1 horse, Forever Young, in the 11 slot. Also, this one's an interesting one because you kind of have to wonder that middle of the pack. Sometimes they can get boxed out, Marco. What's your handicap here with a horse like this?
Well, actually, Kelly, in the Kentucky Derby, this is where you want to be. Post positions 7 to 11, 12. Those are the ideal spots coming from the middle of the pack because you've got a straight shot out. You've got, if you have any speed, you can get your position where you want to be. The worst place you want to be is down on the rail in a race like this because you're going to have the avalanche of the horses from the outside trying to get to the rail as quickly as possible. And sometimes you just get buried down there. So I think the post position for him is not a problem. What he is running against is history. And history is this horse is shipping over from Japan. Japanese horse has won the Kentucky Derby, and they come over every year because there's a couple races in Japan. Just like over here, you have to earn your way into the Derby. There's a couple races that will give you the automatic bid to the Kentucky Derby, and this horse earned his way over. Unlike the previous horses that have come from Japan and failed miserably, and trust me, several of them have come over with a lot of buzz. A lot of people like them, but then they fizzled over here. This horse, to me is the best one that I have seen from all of the Japanese horses that have tried the Kentucky Derby. And I've went back and I've watched all of this horse's career races, and he just keeps impressing me more and more each race. He has enough gate speed that he can get position. He's not going to be on the lead in this race, but he's going to be what we refer to as a stalker. And honestly, that's the best racing style to win the Kentucky Derby. You're not right on the lead in case there's fast fractions. You don't get caught up in a speed duel. You're not a stone cold closer have to deal with a ton of traffic. You're right off the leaders in that middle pack where you'll be able to navigate out of trouble and have the jump on the closers. I like his racing style. And if you go back and watch some of those races from across the pond, you will see this horse has incredible heart. He had the last two races, he raced in the UAE Derby and the Saudi Derby. Those two races were absolutely impressive. I go back to the Saudi Derby. This horse broke out of the gate a step slow. So he was handicapped from the start. He had to make up ground. And at the top of the stretch, there was no way that I thought this horse could possibly reach. And he just kept grinding and grinding and grinding with that closing kick. He got up at the very last stride to get the win. Then in the next race, the UAE Derby, which is the biggest race in Japan, or Dubai, I should say, he was 5 wide the entire race. It didn't tire. Able to run down the horse that was on the front end. And whenever he got even with that horse, this is what I liked. It was almost like he looked that horse in the eye and then he just went right on by. He kicked up what looked like was going to be a stretch drill all the way to the finish in a photo finish. In those final strides, he opened up by 2 lengths as soon as he collared the horse. This horse, I think, don't sleep on. This is a horse that has a big shot in this race, and hopefully the big crowd here doesn't bother him. That's some of the things that sometimes has bothered some of the other Japanese horses, but he's been here at Churchill all week, getting schooled around, acclimated to everything. I'm going to give him a big shot on Saturday. That's Forever Young.
Marco, we're going to touch on a couple more things before we let our audience go. But first, I wanted to give out your promo code for your All Access package, $39. You're going to get all of Marco's action, everything Marco is betting in this race himself. That is all of his Kentucky Derby selections, all of his NBA, all of his MLB and NHL plays for Saturday as well for $39. Marco has been absolutely crushing it since January 7th. He has his clients up over $11,000. So you guys are going to get $10 off Marco's Kentucky Derby package when entering coupon code Derby10. Again, not only are you going to get everything he's betting in the race himself, you're also going to get NBA, MLB, and NHL plays. Marco, we have one more long shot we want to talk about. And this one is really speaking my language. 14 posed endlessly, 30-1. This is a horse I think I can get behind.
Oh, Kelly, I knew you would like this one. You like those big balloons, kind of like that $452 exacta that we didn't play the other day. But here we go. I like Endlessly. This is a spot for this horse. He's got 6 career starts. He's won 5 of them. But the big question on Endlessly is he's never raced on dirt. He started his career on grass. His first 4 races were on grass, and then his last 2 were on a synthetic surface. Now he's switching to dirt for the first time. Everybody, you don't know what's going to happen until you do that. Obviously, the connections think he can handle it. And I remember a horse back in 2011 that was doing the same thing, making his first start on dirt in the Kentucky Derby. It was one of my bigger scores in the Kentucky Derby because I had that horse. That horse's name was Animal Kingdom, and he lit up the tote board that day for me. And this horse has that same look. What I like about this horse also is if you go back and watch, especially his last 2 races, this horse, when he launched his move, he will be racing mid-pack. But when he launched his move in both of those races, he didn't swing wide till late. He saved ground by splitting horses. A lot of young horses don't like to do that. They're very tentative if you try to put them through tight quarters. This horse went right through tight quarters without a problem. And the minute he got through the hole, he just absolutely like swelled up, and you saw a burst on him, and he rolled to the finish line. This is a horse that shouldn't be 30-1, in my opinion, in this race. This is going to be a horse that I'll have on my tickets. And again, he's going to be overlooked, in my opinion, because of all the hype with the other horses and the fact that this is the first time on dirt. He's been on Churchill surface training all week. His last workout was very good. 30-1, that's a juicy one, Kelly. Got to look at that one on your tickets.
I definitely will be. Well, let's just be honest. I'm going to have a bazillion exactas. I'm part of that dead money Marco laughs about. I don't think I've ever cashed a very profitable ticket in the Derby. The Preakness, though, don't worry. Marco and I are going to be back for the Preakness and, of course, the Belmont as well. But, Marco, let's talk about this really quick again, where people can get your package. I know since I have been at WagerTalk since 2017, you have absolutely crushed all of these big races. It has been great. 2017, you turned $390 into $9,000 for me personally. So I know your clients were also happy. Tell us how we can get exactly what you're betting in this year's Kentucky Derby.
Just head over to WagerTalk.com. Go to my homepage. You can go there directly by going to wt.buzz/MD. You'll see my Kentucky Derby package. It's up now. Purchase it now. And the plays will be added Friday night, overnight, the Kentucky Derby selection. So we want to wait to see weather conditions and if there are any more scratches. If we need, we'll update it Saturday morning if there's any late scratches. And then on Saturday throughout the day, I'll be adding all of my sports plays. That'll be NBA, hockey, and the baseball plays. You'll get everything for $39. But if you use coupon code Derby10, just punch that in at checkout, you'll save $10. That's my thank you for you taking the time to hang out with Kelly and I today, talking horses.
Marco also does the Pony Pundit Show. It's going to be available Wednesday evening. They're going to take a much deeper dive into the Kentucky Derby with my good friend Sean Alvarez. Of course, Marco D'Angelo is going to be there as well. And our favorite guy from Bet On It, Joe Ranieri. Make sure you guys head over to the WagerTalk YouTube channel so you do not miss the next episode of Pony Pundits. Again, Marco, thank you for your time. Let's see if we can't cash ourselves another Derby winner.
Sounds good.